Yeah, Heather is.
Go ahead and get started then. Test 1, 2. All right, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the monthly meeting of the City of Des Moines Zoning Board of Adjustment. This board has the power under Iowa law and the zoning ordinance of the City of Des Moines to hear and make decisions on requests for variances and exceptions from the regulations in the zoning ordinance, to review conditional use requests, and to consider appeals from any decision of the city staff in the administration of the zoning ordinance. The members of this board are citizens of the City of Des Moines. They have been appointed to this board by the City Council. The board members are volunteers, and they receive no compensation for their public service. I'm going to take a minute here to introduce our board members and city staff who will be assisting with the hearing. On the audience's right is Tom DeCio. Next to him is Dave Gare. Next to Dave is Rhonda Cedillo. On the audience's far left is Justin Gross. Next to him is Marlis Jones, and I'm Mel Pins, the board chair. We have a 7-member board. We usually have very good attendance. Usually have 6 or 7 of us. We are missing one member today who is out. They are ill. I'll introduce our city staff who will be assisting us today. To my left is the Zoning Board of Adjustment's legal counsel, Gary Guidelock. City staff who will be assisting today are Bert Dross, the Deputy Planning Administrator, Catherine Dreyhaus, City Planner, and Chris Heilskov, Zoning Enforcement Officer. Kind of behind the curtain, our meeting moderator for our audio, video recording, and broadcasting is Carlotta Wolder, and she's being assisted by Monica Vasquez. I'll cover the meeting's procedure here today. For some of you, this may be your first time in front of us. You may hope it's your only time you need to be here. But we'll give you the background on how the hearing works, but on each agenda item, we'll guide you through the process. So don't be nervous about the process itself, like when you get up, when you get to speak, all that stuff. We'll take you through it. But to give you the background here, first and foremost, the Zoning Board of Adjustment is a quasi-legal board. This hearing will be conducted within the procedures and format as authorized by Iowa law and this city's ordinances. This meeting is open to the public. The meeting is being recorded by both audio and video for a legal record of these proceedings. The board members have each received a copy of the agenda and the staff recommendations. And if you're in the audience here and you don't yet have a copy of the agenda and the staff recommendations for each item, those are printed here. They're in the little black boxes here just as you walked in the door to the hearing room. So when I'm done with my opening remarks, if you need to grab a copy of those, feel free to do so. The board is required to base its decision on each item upon the criteria established by law for the type of relief sought by the appellant. The law applicable to each case has been identified in the written staff report. If the facts, as determined by this board, demonstrates that the criteria established by law for granting the relief have been satisfied, then the board must grant the requested relief. Otherwise, the board must deny the requested relief. Each item will be announced in the order that it appears on the agenda. The items listed on the consent portion of the agenda, which is our first section of the agenda, are not planned to be individually discussed. Rather, they will be considered for approval in accordance with the recommendation in the staff report, unless the appellant does not agree to the conditions that have been recommended by staff, or if there's an individual in the audience or on this board that requests that the item be removed from the consent agenda so that a full discussion on the matter can occur before a decision is made. So I'll come back to that consent agenda here just in a moment, and I'll even take a poll of the audience. For our regular portion of the agenda, after an item is announced, city staff will first give a brief overview of the appeal. They'll present any written comments that have been received prior to the hearing. Then the applicant or their representative will be given up to 10 minutes to present their appeal. Thereafter, we'll move to the public comment portion of the hearing for that agenda item. Anyone that wishes to speak in support of the item, opposition to it, or even in neutrality of the requested appeal will be allowed up to 5 minutes each for their comments. This will be their one and only opportunity to address the board regarding the agenda item at hand. Once all concerned citizens have spoken, the board will then ask any additional questions of city staff. Lastly, the applicant will be given 3 more minutes for a rebuttal or other closing comments if they so choose. All speakers must speak only from the podium here at the center of the room. You see a little thin microphone sticking up there by the screen. Before you begin your presentation, you'll need to first give both your name and address of business or residence, as appropriate, in the event that you may need to be contacted for legal notices related to the outcome of this appeal. All speakers are requested to remain courteous and to focus their comments only upon those facts that demonstrate whether or not the criteria established by law has been satisfied. If necessary, the board chair will limit further comments by a speaker if they exceed their time limitation. The board chair will then close any further public comments on the agenda item. The board will immediately deliberate the request, and we will make a decision on the appeal here today. Please note that it takes at least 4 affirmative votes for any zoning appeal to gain approval. If your appeal is approved today, we ask that you please wait until at least 1 week from today's hearing if you would need to contact the city's Permit and Development Center, if you'd need to obtain any necessary building or sign permits that are related to your appeal. This will allow the decision of this board to be documented in the form of a decision and order, which will be provided to both you and city staff. Any appeal that is approved by the board must be implemented, constructed, or otherwise utilized within 2 years of the date of the decision of this board, or such approval shall expire. Finally, the decisions of this board can only be appealed in the Iowa District Court. So if you feel you've been harmed by an error made by this board, your only remedy is to seek relief through the court within 30 days of the filing of the board's decision and order. If you believe the zoning regulations applied by this board are wrong, you may petition the City Council to change those regulations for future considerations. All material that written or otherwise used today as part of anyone's presentation is considered part of the permanent record. So if you want to show any documents, photos, or drawings when you give your presentation, if you have not already provided those to city staff, you'll have to provide them with a suitable copy of those. And you can contact city staff after the hearing if you'd like a copy of anything that was presented here today. Just some quick housekeeping items. We'd ask that you please avoid any undue conversation in the audience so as to limit distractions during the hearing that is in progress. You're doing fine with that so far. We'd also ask please ensure your cell phone has been silenced. Good job from what I can hear. And if you need to use the restroom, you can just leave through the doors here. You don't have to go back downstairs. There's restrooms here on this level, just past the staircase on your left. Once the agenda item that you're interested in has been completed, you're welcome to leave the meeting. And we will take about a 5-minute break here, about 3 o'clock or so, depending on how far we are in the agenda, if that may be needed. So speaking of the agenda, I'm just going to have Bert go over our agenda to see if we have any changes to the printed agenda. Bert, anything to share?
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board, Bert Dross, Deputy Planning Administrator for the City of Des Moines. We do have 2 changes to the agenda. Consent items number 2 and 3 need to be discussed. We've received significant opposition to both of those. Again, it's item 2 at 2355 East University, Suite 104, and then item 3 at 4151 Merle Hay Road. So we will have to have those discussed. So that just leaves item number 1 on the consent agenda, which staff is okay leaving that one on the consent agenda as long as there aren't any neighbors here to speak against it.
Okay, and Bert, just briefly on item 1, that's a temporary sign related to a planned housing mixed-use development that's going in, is that right?
Correct. There's a townhouse residential development under construction. They want a temporary sign for a 12-month period to help market the new townhomes while they're under construction.
Okay. All right. Is there anybody here in the audience that would be opposed to this board granting the requested zoning exception for a temporary sign use at 1328 Thomas Beck Road. Anybody here opposed to that? All right, seeing none here for the board, or are there anybody here at the board that would be opposed to granting approval on this one?
Chair, I move to approve item 1.
Okay. All right. So motion by Justin, second by Marlis. So we'd be approving item 1, which is the consent agenda. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. So as an example, the record of this decision and order will be provided by about this time next week. So then if the contractor owner wants to go down and take out that temporary sign permit, there'll be a copy of this at the desk for their reference. Okay, so that concludes our consent agenda for today. So what we do on the regular hearing is, since items 2 and 3 have been moved for full discussion, we'll start with item 2. And Bert, this is going to be your item?
Yes, it is.
All right, so Bert will give us a brief overview of the appeal.
All right. Chair, members of the board, again, Bert Dross, Deputy Planning Administrator for the city. Item number 2 is a request for a conditional use for Tenant Bay 104 within a strip mall at 2355 East University Avenue. They are requesting a conditional use permit that would allow them to derive up to 40% of their gross receipts from the sale of beer, wine, and tobacco products. And as I'll get to later, there's a little bit of a dispute between the property owner and the business in regards to the tobacco sales, but that's really not germane to the board's discussion today. So the site, like I said, is a strip mall on the south side of East University, just to the south of the Anderson Erickson Dairy. The tenant bay is towards the middle of that strip mall. Here is a couple photos. And this is the Prime Spot is the name of the shop that wants to add beer and wine sales. This is just the description of what they're proposing. Again, they're just saying they wanted to add beer and wine, and they would be devoting about 100 square feet of their floor area to beer and 100 square feet to wine. And this is the site sketch that they've provided. North is to the bottom, so the main entrance is here to the south, or I'm sorry, at the bottom, and then just showing where the shelves are. And the cooler along the west wall would have the beer and wine. As far as the staff recommendation goes, we have recommended approval. In order to have beer and wine sales, they need to provide 150 feet of separation from any church or place of worship, park, daycare, or school, and they do meet that separation distance. We have recommended approval subject to 8 conditions, and they're the standard conditions, so I won't read through those today. But again, the main one is that they would have to derive no more than 40% of their sales from beer and wine and tobacco products. So here's the consent map. We got a card from Anderson Erickson to the north in opposition. We have one card that's undecided to the west, and then I'll also show you comment cards in opposition from both the Fairground neighborhood, which is the area south of East University, and the Accent neighborhood, which is the area to the north of East University. So this is the Accent neighborhoods card. This is from Anderson Erickson. And this is the dentist to the west. And then this is the Fairground neighborhood. And then, as I mentioned, we did get an email from Genevieve York at Denny L. Well Company, just indicating that the tobacco sales violates the lease. So that's just something I wanted to make the board aware of. And we typically leave that between since the conditional use isn't needed for the tobacco sales, we'll leave that to the landlord and their tenant. Were there any other questions for me?
I'm an example. Turn your microphone on before you start talking, board. Did you have a consent map there?
Yeah.
And what did that show us? There we go. Okay. What's that company do across the street?
Right. Dairy.
What did the cows say? Yeah. So Bert, just if you could review just some previous fundamentals. So I see in their letter, their proposal is we want to be a convenience store is what they say. And their request here is a conditional use for sales of wine or beer. So what are they already selling here, and what conditional uses did we already have?
Right now, they're selling like tobacco products and then other retail products.
Okay.
There was no conditional use required
For anything for
any
that.
of that. Right?
Okay, so when is a conditional use required for just tobacco?
It's really not. It's
Okay.
only if they introduce beer and wine sales.
Okay,
Then
got
the board could consider a conditional use for a tobacco store where beer and wine sales
Okay,
comprise up to 25% of their sales. But if it's 100% tobacco, there's no
all
need
right.
for the board.
So if I wanted to open up a cigar store that said Smoke and Mel's, then I don't need anything.
Right.
Okay, all right. So issues related to tobacco aren't necessarily really under our purview here today unless it'd be tied in with the
Right.
beer and wine request.
Right,
Okay.
and I guess if the board really wanted to, you could put a condition on it that says no tobacco sales, which I think is what the land or the property owner is indicating is already required, but staff's not making that recommendation at this time.
And if we were so inclined to approve this conditional use request for the wine and beer, unless there were other conditions, yes, they could sell tobacco, but combined, all of that would still have to stay under 40%.
Correct.
So then in a
Yeah.
weird way, the tobacco is kind of regulated.
True, yeah.
Okay. All right, I think that's clear enough for me, at least on setting. Justin?
Bert, can you just briefly describe the monitoring of the 40% receipts? I mean, how
Sure.
do we know that that's going to take
Yes,
place?
if the zoning enforcement officer becomes suspicious that they're not meeting that requirement, they can, like, I'm trying to find the exact code, but the Chapter 135 or Chapter 134 of the city code does give the zoning officer the ability to request an audit where they have to provide the numbers of their sales and prove that they are meeting that 40% threshold.
Okay, so it just takes, the enforcement officer has to kind of make the first
It does,
step.
right.
Okay. Thank you.
Good one. Other questions for Bert? Okay, seeing none, then the way the hearing works is now it's time for the applicant or their representative to come up to the microphone, and they've got up to 10 minutes to present their reasoning of why we should approve their request for conditional use to sell wine and beer. So who's here today to represent the applicant on this item? Is the applicant present in the audience? Property owner? Business owner? Do you have an impression they were going to be here today, Bert? One way or the other? Okay. Would there be any concerns from your part that they didn't understand how the hearing process would work based on conversations? Okay. All right. So, all right, if the applicant or the representative is not here, since they did not request any continuance, I guess we'll proceed with the hearing. Is there anybody present in the audience today that wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request? Okay, seeing none, is there anybody present in the audience who would wish to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? If there is anyone, just please raise your hand initially. Anybody who would not want us to approve this proposal to sell wine and beer from this establishment? If you don't like that, raise your hand, please step up. Okay, well, this could be a no-hitter. Is there anybody that wants to speak in neutrality on the item? Seeing none, I guess, board members, do we have any further questions for city staff? Justin?
Bert, I'm just wondering about, so was the impression of the applicant that this was on the consent agenda, and so they just assumed that it
that's
was
a
going
good
to be,
That is a
Go through.
possibility, yeah,
okay.
Okay.
So that might be a reason why they're not here today.
it could be. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. And Bert, since you're up here, and this is time for questions for staff, I should have asked this earlier.
Options.
Okay.
Thanks.
And Chris, while you're here, Bert, the staff recommendation is for approval. Did we have operating hours anywhere in this for any considerations? Did the applicant propose operating hours? Uh-huh, okay, here we are. So 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. during what I want to call weekdays, 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. Friday and Saturdays is what they're proposing. If we were so inclined to approve this, we could add that into a condition of their operation. Is that correct? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you for answering our questions, giving some additional information. Since I'll just do this again. Is the applicant here? Do they want to talk about their case? Seeing that they're not here, they don't get a chance to rebut. So we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation. Board members, any initial thoughts? It's not liquor. It's just beer and wine. Just as clarification.
If this was on the consent agenda and staff is going to approve it, I think
Right.
we just move to staff.
Yeah. Yeah, there's not a lot either against or of concern. Well, in fact, nothing apparently, except for there was some discussion about specifics of a contract, which we're not here to enforce. Marlis,
I'm sorry, what did the letter say that the hours were they were going to be opened?
can you do that from your desk? Yeah.
8 to 10 and then 8 to midnight.
Oh, okay. Because on the internet, it says they're open from 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. every day.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't believe everything I read on the internet.
Right. Yeah, usually my concern is when they're open late. That's when, like your grandma says, nothing good happens after midnight. So looks like they'll be closed by 10 on weekdays and midnight on weekends.
But Chair, I agree
Yeah.
that maybe it should be a ninth condition in there.
Yeah,
A ninth
to add
condition,
that in as a condition.
Add the hours.
Yeah. I think since the applicant specifically in, kind of one paragraph of what we want to do, said this is our limitations on hours, I think that should be in there. Okay, if there's further discussion, great. If not, would there be a motion to grant approval? If there is, oh, this is true.
Put closed on Sundays then.
So let's do a little like inference. What do they say for Sunday hours? Were they typical of the weekday or the weekends?
7 days a week are the same.
Oh,
10
okay.
a.m. to 10 p.m.
Well, what about 10 p.m. on Sundays then? I think for the good of the community.
Sunday through Thursday?
Yeah. So let's put all that together in the form of a motion from someone.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, motion by Dave for,
I'll second.
but the motion is to approve the conditional use request based on staff recommendation and the addition of operating hours of 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and 8 a.m. to 12 a.m. midnight on Fridays and Saturdays. So that's your motion, Dave.
Yes, thanks.
And that was your second, Marlis?
Yes, that
Okay.
was.
All right. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
All right, motion carries 6-0. Okay, so that's item 2. That'll move us now then to item 3, which we took off consent, so we could have a full presentation and discussion like you just saw. So in this case, Catherine's going to give us the background.
Chair, members of the board, Catherine Dreyhaus, planner for the city of Des Moines. We are looking at Casey's located on 4151 Merle Hay Road. This is at the intersection of Merle Hay with Aurora. They are looking to expand their conditional use from beer and wine to also allow the sales of alcoholic liquor. Previously, in the past, there's been a daycare nearby that's excluded them from the sale of alcoholic liquor. That daycare has now ended or moved away. So they are looking to add that alcoholic liquor sales to their store. Not pertinent to the discussion is that they are also looking to do major updates to the site. They are going to be removing the car wash that's currently located along the south side of their property line and the drive for the car wash, as well as expand the existing building. Their representative could probably provide greater detail if you have questions on that. This is from across the street, and then just a quick view from inside, and again, that car wash there will be going away. They provided us with a few site plans. You can see where it's being expanded out, and then similar to the previous conditional use request, but a little bit different. Again, we are recommending approval of their request, same 8 conditions as before, with the addition of no more than 40% of the gross receipts from sales on the premise can be derived from the sale of alcoholic liquor, wine, beer, and/or tobacco products. So they are also required to follow that part of the code. While the consent map does not show that we received any cards back, and we did not, we did receive fairly detailed response from the Neighborhood Association Board of Directors. And I believe they have somebody here to speak on this, so I'll just go through this quickly and they can refer back to it. Essentially, they are looking to ask the board to provide some conditions of approval. So they're essentially in support, but they had a few concerns. And a lot of their concerns, I will say, are things that are typically addressed through our site plan review process. But some of these are, of course, you can consider them should you as a board want to add conditions to any approval that you may decide to grant. So the things that they are looking at and are concerned about are the legal nonconforming billboard located on the site, and then they were also concerned that some of their outdoor sales areas are not highlighted on the site plan. They were concerned about the shielding from on the residential side of the mechanical equipment that's located on the roof. Currently, there isn't any shielding. And then they were concerned about the overall site conditions along that east property line. And also the what we call the fence frontage buffer along Merle Hay is currently not there. They've not done any work since the code has been updated to include that requirement until this moment. And so they're looking for cleanup and continuity of that. Mm-hmm. And they were concerned about stormwater on the site, as well as the drain located on the Aurora side, entrance and exit, if it's sufficient for the stormwater that goes through. And then other elements of site maintenance and upkeep. So we can go back through that if you have any questions. Otherwise, I do believe they have a representative here today from the Merle Hay Neighborhood Association Board of Directors.
Yeah, Catherine, what I might say is, and again, anybody that wants to speak in opposition to an item, they have 5 minutes. So that's not a whole lot of time, so they got to be pretty succinct. But sometimes there's concerns that maybe we can address through our questions with staff. As an example, Catherine, screening of mechanical units, that's a requirement in the site plan. However, does that requirement address its presence from like major streets, or is it from all 4 sides? How does that work?
If you're asking me specifically about the site plan screening requirement, you are pushing my memory a little bit, but I believe...
Oh, well, you have good support colleagues here.
Yes. They do have to screen from
All right.
the residential
All
side.
right, so they have to screen from that.
That would be something that would be covered through the site plan review.
And
process.
within current site plan development ordinance, things like lighting has to be directed down and at the site. That's a change from what it had been a few years ago, correct?
That's correct. Downward
Okay.
directional lighting.
Yep.
It has to be 0 or 1 nits at foot candle at the property
Yeah, which
line.
I have no idea what that means, but, but in essence, yeah, you just can't have a big light on a pole shining into somebody's backyard.
Correct.
And
Fencing
then-
has to be provided as well to screen the property
Right.
to the residential side. I believe
s-
the fence that's there is currently on the residential side versus the.
Right, right.
Casey's
So
side.
they're not, whether it's Casey's or anybody else, they aren't responsible for the management of somebody else's backyard fence off their property.
Correct, but they do have to now provide their own as well, so,
As part of site plan requirements for screening.
yes. Or, oops, I might be wrong.
As far as, would they need to provide a back fence, or do they just have to have sufficient landscaping or other?
Parking there, there'd have to be fence between the parking and any road.
That was it.
Okay, and again, that's all part of site plan, which
Correct.
covers many of these issues, and by default, this board doesn't review site plans.
Correct.
Right. Same thing with stormwater. That's a requirement to manage that and control that with any development.
Correct.
They still have to have a certain amount of open space to handle stormwater, right?
Correct.
Okay.
All of that is accurate.
Okay.
Is there anything Merle Hay, the association is concerned with, that isn't covered by the site plan? Let's just focus on the
That's
stuff
very
we
good.
need to be dealing with.
Bert's going to rescue me.
I guess with the photos of the building condition, I don't think the site plan would necessarily look at, is there a hole in the wall or things like that. So some of the photos that the neighborhood association provided showed that there was some disrepair of the building. That wouldn't necessarily be addressed by the site plan.
But the items that they bulleted, are any of those not going to be
Yeah,
addressed by you
the
guys?
landscaping, lighting, stormwater, that would
Okay.
be.
So and we can let the Casey's representative speak to this other stuff, because I doubt they like that either.
Right.
So, okay, that's great, thanks.
Okay. Yes, Marlis,
Do you
question?
happen to know the hours of operation? Is that in here, and I didn't see it?
Forgive me. Yeah, the applicant's saying that they can address that. It might be in their, I don't see it in their neighborhood report summary, but let's see. They did provide us information regarding their neighborhood meeting and their attempts for outreach. They said they reached out to the neighborhood association and were unable to make contact with them. They checked with the neighborhood services division that handles the neighborhood associations and received contact information back from them. And then they provided us with information about the meetings that they did hold. They held 2, one on a Saturday and one on a Sunday. And they said between the two, they had a turnout, I believe, of 59 people.
Wow.
I will,
Did you guys have free coffee or something? Don't answer.
see if I can. They did provide a list of the questions they received and some of their responses. They said they'll begin remodeling the entire store. Car wash won't be there, and they're looking to add a full kitchen. They had a question about the expansion and addition of liquor resulting in higher prices. Will you get the pumps to work at all times? They wanted to know when they would be able to start selling liquor, and I guess there were some additional comments, so.
Okay.
Then, let's get right here. Oh, here's their narrative. It looks like they will be open daily with hours of 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I can zoom in if anyone
Okay.
wants to see that better. then they provided us with copies of their flyer that they made available. They did have complimentary pizza and drinks, Mel, and then their sign-in sheet as well. So you can see they had a good attendance. So again, we're recommending approval with the standard 8 conditions, as well as a 9th condition limiting their sales of alcoholic liquor, wine, beer, and/or tobacco to 40%. If you have any questions for staff, additional?
Justin?
So the impetus for this change is because of a daycare that closed, is that correct?
Closed or moved away, we're
and
not
we-
sure.
and we
It's just no longer located.
And we have verification that that occurred, is that right?
Yes, it no longer shows up on our
Okay.
system that we use to identify
Great.
daycares. They're not
Thank you.
registered with the state anymore.
And I would assume the applicant can talk to this with a store remodel or rebuild and expansion, probably logically at that time. Hey, like, what are we selling and what else can we sell? Probably just a review, but we'll see what the applicant says there. Anything else, anybody? Okay. All right, thank you, Catherine.
Thank you.
Okay, so applicant or representative of the applicant, you've got up to 10 minutes to present your request, and we just need your name and address as appropriate to kick us off.
Yeah, so my name is Jim Scalota. I'm Associate General Counsel for Casey's. Address is 1 Southeast Convenience Boulevard, Ankeny, Iowa. I also have our district manager here, Sue, who attended one of the community meetings I wasn't able to attend. So the impetus really is, as you said, the remodel of the store. This is the last Casey's store in Des Moines that doesn't have a full kitchen. There's only 2 left in the greater Des Moines area. One's right by my house in Ankeny that also doesn't have one. So we're trying to put a full kitchen in every Casey's store in the area. And we've been reinvesting generally and building new. So I passed on the way here. The 14th Street store is pretty new. About 2 years ago now, the Forest Ave, our first non-fuel store. So been trying to make a reinvestment in the general Des Moines area. As was stated, this came out of our remodel. Our hope to offer to all of our guests is the same experience throughout all of our stores. For Casey's, that includes pizza, obviously, and also alcohol, including spirits, where we can get it. As you know, this is, you've seen this area, it's a commercial corridor. There was a Price Chopper across the street. That's since gone out of business. A lot of the feedback, to my surprise, from the meeting was, ever since they went out of business, there's no competition. There's, the prices at the remaining places that sell liquor have actually gone up. So we had more positive feedback to this at the community meeting than I'm typical to experiencing. You saw the 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. I think it's actually open right now, 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. That's kind of our plan for doing that. We did try to reach out to the board of directors, and it sounds like most of their concerns are about the actual physical store and the site plan. Our plan is not to add the liquor until we finish that remodel. There's really no place to put it right now, even if we could. And the city often has special requirements as far as cabinets and various other things that are not available in that store at that time. So I would imagine that their concerns would be raised, through that site plan review process. Obviously, we prefer not to have our site plan be a public review, but it is what it is. And that's about it, unless I can answer some other questions for you.
Sure. Thanks, Jim. Questions for the applicant? Jim, I've always got a few questions. So you mentioned this is the only place without a kitchen, but to the best of your knowledge, or if Sue can help, what other locations do you have nearby that's already selling beer, wine, and liquor?
So I know that we have the Forest Ave location, and we have a total of 4 locations in the city of Des Moines, but I don't off the top of my head know which ones they are.
You guys have a store just southwest of Merle Hay Mall on Douglas, right? It's pretty new. Yeah. Do you sell beer and wine there? Do you sell liquor at that one? No. Okay. All right. I was just thinking of some close stores in the area. For the beer and wine you have been selling at the current location, I'm assuming that's been throughout since Casey started. Was the previous owner-operator selling beer and wine there?
So this was an acquisition, you can tell that this is an acquisition. And I'm not sure, right? So in the 6 years since I've been here,
You've been selling beer.
it's been selling beer.
Okay, all right. Yeah, and I can't remember, was this Phillips 66, or I'm trying to remember what they were branded? Yeah, shortstops, yep, okay. Let's see. Yeah, yeah, there are a lot of things that will be taken care of in the site plan review, as staff mentioned, you've mentioned as well. I do have a concern with any convenience stores, obviously a lot of activity and traffic, no matter if they're just selling donuts, Casey's Pizza, when we have residents that are nearby or like behind a store. And I couldn't quite tell from your site plan if that got into landscaping, but can you tell us what kind of buffering would you have on what I'm going to call that west longitudinal to their backyards? Or what kind of screening or things would you have going on back there?
Yeah, so I don't have access, just because I didn't bring them, right, to that part of the plan. Unfortunately, we have a different department that handles our remodels and all that stuff.
Sure.
I can say, as far as not necessarily visual screening, but sound screening, without that car wash, everything should be significantly better, right? Car washes are loud, and they're usually not preferred in a residential area.
Okay.
That's going to be gone, and so if there are any sound concerns from the neighborhood, getting rid of that car wash really should help on those things.
And with the car wash gone, will that back driveway go away as well? Or will you have access to the back of the store for customers somehow?
I doubt that we would put in a rear entry here. It's pretty tough because that's where your coolers are. So if you put a door in the back, it's hard to get through that area.
Okay.
So to my knowledge, there isn't a plan for a rear entry at this location. But again, site plan on a remodel is just that I didn't expect those issues to come up because I wasn't aware of those comments from the board.
Bert, do we have their preliminary site plan? Can you pull that or not? What was that we were looking at? They had the floor plan and stuff. Because again, what I just want to get at is, just kind of your thoughts between the two of you on, again, that traffic circulation that would be behind the store, if there is any.
I don't believe there's going to be any. I know
Okay.
that we would have a new door on the side of the building.
On the north side?
Where the old car wash was. Is where
Oh, on the south side. Okay.
where the trucks will be delivering the
Okay, yeah, and if you want to speak, so I'm going to have you come up to the mic here. The existing garage I see on the northeast corner, is that on your property, or is that the neighboring driveway in a neighboring property?
So that should be on the neighboring property.
Okay.
And I can tell you that on a site this tight, and this is a narrow, tight site, we wouldn't have room to both have a drive aisle behind the store and sufficient room between the canopy where the pumps are and the store.
Yeah, I'm mostly just trying to get at, again, if there's going to be people driving through back there, parking back there, driving into the building back there, it looks like somebody had bad brakes on their car. And again, I think the site plan already addresses, reasonable landscaping, but I'm usually after more than sufficient landscaping for buffering. That may be something you might want to keep in mind. Okay. Anybody else have anything else? Okay. All right. Well, thank you, Jim.
Thank
You
you.
can sit down for the moment. We'll check in with you in a few minutes. Is there anybody that wishes to speak in support of the applicant's request? They would have up to 5 minutes. Going once, going twice. Okay, seeing none, is there anybody that wishes to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? They can either step forward, or there might be more than one. They can decide who wants to speak first. Anybody in opposition? Okay, seeing none. Anybody speaking neutrality, just general things about selling liquor in Des Moines? Seeing none. All right. Any further questions for city staff here? City staff, anything you would want to clarify? If there's not, that's fine. Okay. All right, then we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. Since there were no comments against, anybody have any thoughts?
I'll make a motion for staff. This is going to be on the consent agenda. Let's let them do their job with the site plan. Let's let Casey's do what they really do well. And this is a Fortune, there are 316 out of the Fortune 500 companies. These guys know what they're doing. They didn't get that way by running a gas station that operates without some really good plan. So
Yeah.
I'm really comfortable with this and with that organization. And the biggest place across the street's closed, which for these neighbors, they got an opportunity now to have some stuff that they didn't have, but it's always been there and it'll always be there.
Yeah.
That's just my thoughts, but
Good thoughts?
I'm
All right, so Dave's making a motion to approve staff recommendations for approval, subject to the conditions presented. Any other thoughts? If none, would there be a second on that motion? Second by Tom. All right, so all those in favor of granting the requested conditional use subject to staff recommendation, raise your right hand, say aye. All right, motion passes 6-0. All right, and Sue, I might encourage you, have your store manager walk the site, a couple times a week, or if you're making your rounds, if there's tires laying in the backyard, get them out of there, But yeah, keep up the good work there, and thank you for your open house and working with your neighbors. That's the biggest turnout I've ever heard of for a public meeting. All right. So that will bring us then, I believe, to item number 4, which is a conditional use request at 6550 Bloomfield Road, Suite B.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, members of the board, item number 4 is a request for a conditional use for a bar. They would be using up to 3,600 square feet of area within the north end of an existing building for that bar use. The subject property is located at 6550 Bloomfield Road. For point of reference, Bloomfield Road comes here from Southeast 14th Street and then angles down to the south and east. So there's a Get and Go gas station here at the corner, and then there's this strip mall. Years ago, there was a Loco Joe's arcade in this building. So here are some photos. The bar would be in the north end of this building. I believe the event center is no longer operating, but there is an after-hours event here, and I'll let the applicant explain all the other uses that are going on in this building. But again, the bar would be in the north part of the building, and there's an after-hours business here in the middle that probably might have some discussion later. Here's a proposal, or a description of the proposal from the applicant. Again, just planning to open up a bar. Capacity with a maximum capacity of 170 people. It looks like they intend to be open every night till 2 a.m. Here's the layout. North would be to the left, so there's 2 doors on the west facade of the building. They would have just the standard bar and some tables, and it looks like a dance floor. Here's the staff recommendation. We have recommended approval subject to 13 conditions that are intended to minimize the impacts of the bar. We did feel that this is an appropriate location, located along like the Southeast Street major commercial corridor. It is, not real close to residences. There is a mobile home community to the south and a single-family house to the east. But we feel that as long as the business operates in accordance with the conditions of recommended conditions, it shouldn't be a problem. But I did want to go through these police reports. Most of these are, I guess, generated by that after-hours business that is operating in the building. Since it's an after-hours business, it can't sell any alcohol, so there's no liquor license, there's no conditional use for that. But there have been about 15 police calls generated from that business in the past year. And a lot of them have to do with fights, drugs, or noise. And again, this is for the after-hours business. It's kind of in the middle portion of that strip mall where this bar would go.
What hours is that open? Do you have any idea?
I know it's open after 2 a.m. Bars are required to close at 2, where after-hours businesses are allowed well past 2 a.m.
And Bert, in this case, this is one parcel of land with one owner, And we already have an event center on it, which is allowed by zoning by right. And so we'd be adding a tavern, bar, nightclub onto the
Yeah.
same parcel, correct?
Yeah, exactly. I'll
Okay.
go back to this aerial. So you can see the strip mall is here. The bar would be in the northern portion, and the after hours is here towards the middle. And as I was mentioning, there's a mobile home community to the south, and then a single-family house to the east.
Okay.
Actually, two houses.
And Bert, I've been around on this board for a very long time, and I remember at one time we did have a case with this property, I thought. We had some conditions about like not opening the doors to the east or something for sound. What was that related to?
Sure, yeah. There, in the staff report, we listed the lengthy history of this property. For years, they were operating that event center there. Actually, originally, there was a conditional use issued for a tavern or nightclub use
That
back
must
in
be it.
2011.
Okay.
Then there's also been special permits for off-street, unpaved off-street parking. There was special permits for a multi-day circus, special permits for carnivals, and then the one you were just referencing was a special permit, where was it? I thought there was a condition on here that said,
I wonder if it was related to then the old
Yeah.
nightclub.
yeah,
The
I think
old
when
tavern.
they came in for the conditional use for the
Yeah.
reception venue, there was a condition on it that said any doors on the east or the south could only be open or could only be used for emergency
Emergency.
egress only and not
Right.
for.
Do you have that as a condition now? And
Yeah, that
Your
is a
recommendation?
recommended condition. Yeah. Yeah, so that was condition number 7 that we're recommending right now.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Bert? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir. All right, applicant or representative of the applicant, it's your turn. So please come up, tell us about your proposal. If both of you want to speak, just give both of your names, addresses as appropriate. You've got 10 minutes in total.
So my name is Myrna Ruby, and I'm here representing Tania Ochoa. She is wanting to establish a bar, La Escondida Sports Bar. She has been working with Juan to try to get, the business, or the building.
Can you step toward the microphone there just a
Sorry.
little? Don't be scared of it.
So she has a history. She has a bar in Texas. She has had one there. She is trying to, or she's moving residents. She's been here. ¿Cuánto tiempo tienes aquí?
Tengo poco tiempo, pero, o sea, tengo 30 años. He estado 15 años de mi vida aquí y 15 años de mi vida en Texas.
Okay. So I think she's lived in Texas and here, but she is trying to establish her life and residency here. She does have a bar in Texas that is managed by, I think, family members that have the same name. She hasn't had any issues at that bar. I think we pulled
He
the
sido de
report.
negocios en Texas por 15 años. He ido y venido para Iowa porque tengo mi familia en Iowa.
So I think that's just her plan. She wants to establish the residency here. She wants to bring the business that she has managed and successfully managed for like the last 15, 17 years.
Okay. You up for some questions? If there's anything else you want to add, that's great, but
I do know that the
Yeah.
hours that we had first established were just, she has not had a business here, so she was trying to see what kind of the busy times would be, and so she is okay with limiting those if that's something that you guys want to do. She has no association with the Suite A. She does not know that person that manages that building.
that was going to be one of my questions.
Yeah, so there's
Okay.
no relation there. She does understand that they have had some problems. She doesn't plan to, if they're not good tenants or they're not following the code, that's not somebody that she wants to establish a business relationship with.
Okay, understand that. All right. Questions? That would be a fundamental one for me. So she has no relationship with the other business operator at the event venue, right?
None at all.
Okay, okay. So if I would go to some kind of a party at the event center and they don't have a liquor license, maybe I brought my own, maybe I didn't, but I want to go get a good mixed drink, I'm going to go to her bar and then I'm going to want to walk out with that and go back into my event. How does she see that happening? Is she going to prevent people from taking drinks outside?
So my understanding is all the consumption is going to be in the building. There is no outside portion of the bar, and none of it is to be like taken off the premises. So
Yo soy responsable de la gente que yo le sirvo, más no responsable de la gente que va a after hour y lleva su bebida y toma sin conciencia. Pero yo soy responsable de la gente que toma en mi negocio. ¿Por qué? Porque 15 años me han llevado a la experiencia de no servir alcohol a gente intoxicada ni a gente que no sepa controlar sus
So she's saying that, like, in her business in Texas, she was able to take care of the patrons that she had in her bar. She will provide training for her employees to know when to stop serving alcohol. She does have a not written policy, but she has established a policy in Texas where certain people are not allowed in if they continue to cause issues. So if somebody is doing that, where they're taking alcohol from her business and taking it outside, those people would not be allowed as customers at her bar anymore.
Okay. Marlis, do you have a question? No? Okay. Okay, all right. Well, I think those are the only questions we have for now. All right, thank you both.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, is there anybody here to speak in support of the applicant's request? Seeing none, is there anybody here to speak in opposition to the applicant's request? Come on up. We just need your name, address, and you got up to 5 minutes.
My name is Joanne Stevens. I own the property at 6901 Southeast 14th Street. And so it is the mobile home park to the south of this property. I've got some aerial views.
Yeah, Bert will
You've got it up there on the screen.
help you out. You just want to show the radius map again?
Does anybody want to look at it?
I think they're
Yeah, he's just going to put up on the screen there.
And then if you wanted to, you can show them over here.
Oh, okay.
However you want to do this.
Okay. The mobile home park in this lower section that you see on the aerial consists of roughly 93 lots or home sites. There's a total of about 300 altogether, but these would be the ones the closest to it that would be the most impacted. I can tell you this is a quiet park. We work very hard to not have police calls and to screen our residents so that we make good tenant selections, that we just want good people. We want the property to be as safe as possible. One question I have about this is I was notified by mail of this proposed use. What I'm wondering is, are the homeowners who rent a lot in this property but own their home and they're registered with the Polk County Treasurer, and I'm not sure if they're registered with the assessor, but were they notified about this change?
I would believe it would just be the property owner, not the owner of like a mobile home. Yeah,
However,
it's property owner.
the people that lease the lot,
Right.
they own their homes, they pay taxes. Doesn't it seem fair that they should be notified of this proposed use?
While I don't want to debate that as a citizen myself of the city of Des Moines, you're the property owner. So if you believe that your tenants would have a vested interest, including possessions that they own, such as a mobile home, is there any reason why you would not have notified them and let them know?
I did notify them.
There we go.
Yeah.
Good job.
Yeah.
You are better
Yeah.
than 99% of the landlords we have in the city of Des Moines.
Well, but I think it might have been more, getting something official might have given it a little more oomph to
Okay.
it, but
Do you have some concerns about what has been
yes.
proposed?
Yes, my concern is the noise and drugs, alcohol, fights. We have a lot of school kids that live on this property. We have older people who live in the property. We have working people. It's quiet there now. I don't want that to change. I'm also concerned about the home values. I know I read the staff report, and I'm a real estate agent. I know it's very hard to prove, well, was the home value impacted or was it not? However, all things being equal, should any of my homeowners decide to sell their mobile home, and that prospective home buyer looked at their home, mobile home, and also looked at other mobile home parks that weren't this close to a bar, I think their value could be impacted by being that close to a bar that's open till 2 a.m., 7 days a week. Those are my concerns.
And if those are your concerns, as the record shows, we had already approved a tavern bar at this location a decade plus ago. Had you seen any property value decline or issues or problems during that time frame when that operated?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. And how about the current operation of just the Assembly Event Center? Any overarching concerns with how that has operated?
I've heard a few things, but I don't have any concrete proof of, that it can be noisy at times.
Okay, sure, that's fair. Okay. All right, well, thank you for coming down today. Anybody else that wants to speak in opposition? Okay, anybody that wants to speak in neutrality, just generally about taverns at this location? Seeing none, do we have further questions for staff from anybody? Or anything zoning enforcement officer would like to add?
Chair, members of the board, just a quick historical perspective here, and this is not related to the applicant, but the property itself. We had complaints received in this past fall in regards to behavioral issues there, and our staff worked closely with police. I transferred that over. It was not zoning related, and it was unfounded at that time. But I just wanted to share that with you as far as the property. And we did have some site plan compliance issues to the property, not this particular tenant bay that is before you today, but just they have been complied, and there is no active enforcement at this time.
Okay, so they are in good shape for what they need to be for now?
That's correct.
Including considering this really isn't necessarily an expansion of anything, right? It's existing facility, so
Right.
no site plan trigger.
Yeah, moving into an empty tenant bay,
Gotcha.
essentially.
Okay, thanks for the clarification. Okay, all right, we didn't have anybody speak in opposition, but applicant, you can do this if you want, you don't have to. Is there anything you want to say in closing? You could have another 3 minutes if you'd like. Anything else that comes to mind? Well, I guess we did have somebody who had some concerns. Anything you want to say? Yeah, come on up.
So I believe that part of the staff recommendation, I think it's item 7, says that the exterior doors on the, I think it says north and east side, so there are going to be some doors that are only emergency exit only. And I believe those are the ones that are facing the mobile home area and the east side where the house is at, so to limit any noise complaints.
So are you saying this is in error?
No, I'm
With its
saying that
reference? Oh.
it's already been considered,
Yeah.
so the noise complaint that was brought up is being considered in the staff recommendations, and she's more than willing to comply
Okay,
with
but
those.
she's okay with number 7, yeah.
Yes.
I mean, I'll be honest with you, I've been in bars before too. It's got the push button, it says for emergency use only, because we all think an alarm will go off. They never do.
Yes.
But when it's a hot summer or it's a nice 78-degree day like it was the other day, hey, let's kick the door open. We don't want that.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah, it needs to stay closed because we don't want to be transferring sound to off-site sources. So
agree.
she's okay with 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Okay, we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation. I think I'm going to start off on this one because I live very near this. I used to go to Loco Joe's, even as a 30-something adult. It was kind of like an arcade place. It's kind of fun. It did transition over time. I think I'm not sure if all the tenant bays have ever filled in there at any one time.
Did you open the emergency exit?
No.
when you were there?
No. But I do get a little concerned that this is one property, it's one parcel of land. We've already got an event venue, an assembly center, although they don't need any permission from us. I do get a little concerned. We've already got a use there, and, you know, every 3 weeks the police are there. We got 15 calls a year. It's somewhere around that number. I'm sure she wants to operate in good faith, but I'm a little concerned, I don't know what I want to call it, but almost like stacking. If we start having too many uses on one property, especially when they're on top of or next door to each other, it's kind of like having kindling and tinder, and then are we finally going to reach enough where kablooey, and then we got problems, like maybe a downtown area where we've got one building, and through different conditional uses, we've got 3 or 4 bars in a building, just maybe theoretical. But I'm a little concerned that even with best intentions, we're kind of having two things a little too close together here. And, well, do they have separate hours to a reasonable degree? But I think if you rent an event center, when do you usually rent those? Fridays and Saturdays for parties. How late do those go? Pretty late sometimes. I don't like setting us up for conflict. I realize there are conditions, and she said she'd be prepared to comply with all of those. But, you know, here's a site that doesn't have conditions, and gosh, we got 15 calls. So maybe sometimes it's better to have a requirement for a conditional use so it's more easily enforceable. But I just kind of wanted to throw that out there to you all as my colleagues, because I think she's presenting herself the best she can, but this is a pretty big bar, 3,600 square feet and a room for 170. It's not just a drop-in lounge thing. And I'd be a little concerned that we get a little too much going on a weekend, even if that's not her intention. So I just want to throw that out there, food for thought. Any other thoughts? Justin?
Chair, I would just mention a few things if I could. You know, the problem, it sounds like, is with the after-hours place, right? I mean, and then it's beholden to the owner of the property to deal with that. This particular applicant, though, seems that she has experience in running a bar, maybe not here, but in Texas. I hear the concerns by the landowner of the mobile home park. It seems by the aerial views that there is a buffer there of forest or something between the building and the lot. And besides the mobile home park, there's really it's barren in terms of other property. And so I don't know if the noise is as an issue as I would consider for purposes of denying this applicant. So I think I would be in favor of supporting the applicant today. I mean, I think if there's issues, it's not with this applicant, it's with another, part of the parcel, and then that's, I think, up to the owners to deal with that. And it's not here in front of us today, so that's my thoughts.
I'm sorry, we've closed the public portion of the hearing. We're not taking any more comments. You had your opportunity to step forward earlier. Are there any other thoughts amongst the board members?
No, I hear what you're saying, Mel, but I think we've got someone that's going to be operating a business here versus somebody that's renting a place for a party. It's like, do people take better care of their own cars than a rental car?
Good analogy.
The answer probably generally is yes. So we've got people that are going, hey, there's a party over at this place, and everybody shows up, and that's the only reason they're there. Versus someone with an establishment, she's going to try and, she's moving a business from Texas, or she's moving physically from Texas. I think the last thing she wants to do is create an issue. That certainly would come back. against her, and that wouldn't be a positive. So, you know, I think I'm in favor of it as well, or at least let's give them a chance.
All right, any other thoughts or any motions?
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'm on a roll. I'll just go with staff recommendation
Okay.
on conditions. She didn't object to any of that. I think she sounded like she was flexible on the hours, but if we let most establishments like this are open till 2 a.m.
Yep.
That's acceptable until they give us a reason to not want to do that, and we've certainly done that.
Okay.
So I think if that becomes an issue, then, and it comes back in front of us, then that was something of their own doing. And then I think, as far as this other place goes and all these police calls, I think that'll take care of itself.
Okay. All right, so we've got a motion for approval of the requested conditional use for a bar with related alcoholic beverages, subject to conditions 1 through 13. Would there be a second?
Second.
Second by Marlis. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm just going to say no in principle, but I want this to work out for everybody. Sounds like it will, so motion carries 5-1. Okay, we wish you well. All right, that moves us then on to, we got 2 items left. Item 5, a conditional use request at 3725 Hubble Avenue. And Bert's going to give us some background on this one before we get kicked off.
Sure. All right. Mr. Chair, members of the board, item number 5 is another conditional use for alcohol sales. This would be for a liquor store use. However, I do want to make it clear that it's considered a liquor store for zoning purposes, but they're really only selling wine and beer. The reason it falls into the liquor store category is that they're driving more than 40% of sales from from wine, beer, and tobacco. So if they're keeping it under 40%, then we would call that a retail sales establishment. But because they're driving more than 40% of their sales from wine, beer, and tobacco, it therefore falls into the liquor store category. In order to sell liquor, they would have to provide 500 feet of separation from a place of worship, daycare, school, or park, and a quarter-mile separation from any other business selling liquor for off-premise consumption. This property doesn't meet the separation distance requirements for liquor sales, which is why they were only asking for beer and wine. So the site is located on Hubble Avenue, the 3700 block, just to the, south and east of a Quick Trip. It's an existing smaller commercial building. Here's a photo of it. Right now you can see it's currently more or less a tobacco store. Again, they're wanting to add beer and wine. This is their description. Looks like they're wanting to generally be open from either 7 a.m. or 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. And it looks like they're wanting to limit their wine and beer sales to 40% of the gross sales, but because it's essentially a tobacco store, then they're not going to meet the 40% threshold of beer, wine, and tobacco.
So Bert, I don't want to jump ahead with questions, but I'm just trying to do the math in my head here. So they could have up to 100% sales in beer, wine, and tobacco with this request, yet they want to limit themselves to 40% just on beer and wine.
Yeah, I mean, that's not a condition that staff has recommended,
Okay.
but it
Yeah,
looks
I
like
don't-
they're anticipating no more than
Okay.
40%.
All right. And if they weren't selling tobacco, they probably then theoretically could stay under it, and
Right,
they'd be
exactly.
operating. Are they already operating, selling beer and wine? And
There's no
tobacco?
alcohol sales at all, right?
There's no alcohol sales at all.
Right, it's more or less a tobacco store
Got it.
and vape shop right now.
Okay. Thank you.
So here's the floor plan. Again, they would be adding the beer cooler to the back of the store, or I'm sorry, to the east side of the store. Looks like they have a game room at the back corner as well. Then the staff recommendation, we did as I previously said, say they met the 150-foot separation from any place of worship, park, school, or daycare. It's along Hubble Avenue, which is a major commercial corridor. So staff, I guess, feels that it does satisfy the requirements for granting the conditional use. So we have recommended approval, subject to several conditions, again, that are I think they're all just the standard conditions that you're used to seeing for these types of uses.
Mm-hmm.
I'll show you the consent map. We just got one card from a property owner to the east who is in support. He didn't provide any rationale, said they're in support.
Just for trivia, Bert, way back in the day, what was this place before it was a tobacco store, just by its architecture?
Yeah,
Was
it looks like
a Quick
a
Shop?
gas station, but
Was it Quick Shop? KWIK, yeah. Okay.
It was.
That's what I was thinking, okay.
so here's the neighborhood outreach. They had a neighborhood meeting on February 16th, but they didn't get any neighbors to attend.
Mhm.
So, any questions?
Bert, I just have a general question.
Sure.
It's been lingering this whole meeting. What determines to be on the consent agenda? What is not on the consent? Why was it?
Sure, yeah.
Like those
it's really
two that were kind of
subjective.
now off on the
Yeah,
consent
good question.
agenda? I'm just, how
Yeah.
did we get to this point?
Sure. I mean, we try to make a judgment call on whether we think it's something that's going to be controversial, if we know staff's going to be supportive.
Okay.
Like liquor stores, I don't think we've ever put a liquor store on the consent agenda.
Okay.
Like the
Even if they're not gonna sell
retail
liquor.
sales on East University, again, that was a retail sales establishment where they couldn't derive more than 40% from wine, beer, or tobacco. But since they're driving 100% of sales, we had a hard time putting it on the
Okay.
consent.
So on
But
this one-
Better safe
full
than
discussion.
sorry.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But you're not aware of anyone against this applicant today?
And you're recommending approval
We have recommended
with
approval.
conditions?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
All
Thank you.
right. Yeah, that's a good question, though. And Bert, related to the approval, it would clearly state that they cannot sell liquor, correct?
Yeah, that is one of the recommended conditions, is there should be no liquor
Okay.
sales.
All right. Any other questions for Bert? Okay, all right, thank you for your presentation. All right, applicant or representative of the applicant, it's your turn to step up. Good afternoon, sir, welcome. Thanks for your patience and waiting. We just need your name, address, and you've got up to 10 minutes.
Okay, name Amandeep Singh, address 3725 Hubble Avenue, Des Moines. And on my project description, I did originally ask for 40% because I didn't know that I have to limit the tobacco sales also. So as it is only a tobacco store, so staff recommended me to put it in a category of liquor store, and then I will have like no limit. So I understand that, and also I do understand that there will be no liquor sales, only
Right.
beer and wine. And I did read their conditions, so
You're okay with those?
yes,
Okay. Are you the current operator of the business now, selling the tobacco and everything?
yes.
And how long have you been doing that?
It's almost a year.
Almost a year. So was there somebody else selling tobacco there before? Did you just take over existing sales or?
I'm not the
business?
owner of the property. Somebody was, I don't know, they were not doing the tobacco, I think.
Okay.
They were closed like 6-7 months before.
So it'd been closed for a while?
Yeah.
Okay.
And, sorry, yeah. The people who I leased from, they had their business for like 3 or 4 months as tobacco store. Yeah.
Okay,
Sorry.
that's it. Okay.
Yeah.
What hours are you open now? I think you list here you'd want to be open until 2 a.m., is that right?
No, it's my
No.
current hours. Monday to Friday, we are at 7 a.m. to 2 a.m.
Right.
Saturday, Sunday, 8 a.m. to 2 a.m.
8 a.m. till what on weekends?
8 a.m. to 2 a.m.
2 a.m., okay. That's what you're doing now as well?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. Other questions for the applicant? Okay. All right. Thank you for your good presentation. You can sit down for a minute. We got a pretty big room here. We'll see who wants to speak on this. Anybody speak in support of the applicant? Anybody speak in opposition? Anybody in neutrality? Anything staff feels they need to share? Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public portion and go to board deliberation. So I'm going to ask you East Siders here, since this is our deliberation, we're citizens. A lot of the concerns we had years ago about the proliferation of liquor stores kind of began on the northeast side of town. And one of the concerns was that we don't want one like, every block, and we don't want to have huge impacts from anyone that is there. But from what everybody's seen, how this sets in here, what they propose, 2 a.m. is pretty late to me, but by the same token, it doesn't sound like there's been major concern about it. Anybody got any thoughts on that?
2 a.m. seems late also to me, but I really don't know that there's a lot of other stores close by. And it is a fairly commonly traveled street.
Mm-hmm. And he's been open till 2 a.m. already just selling his tobacco, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's what I understood. Yeah. Well, anybody got thoughts?
Well, I'd like to motion.
Sure, go ahead.
It's approved by staff
Okay.
recommendations.
All right, so we got a motion by Rhonda to approve the requested conditional use. While it would be as a liquor store, there would be a provision they can only sell wine and beer, no alcoholic liquor sales. That would be prohibited, correct, staff? Okay, all right, so that's the motion. Is there a second?
I might as well.
All right, second by Marlis. All those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye.
Aye.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, 6-0. All right. You can expand the business there. Just keep an eye on those conditions. Keep the place looking good. Watch your customer base, and you'll be successful. All right. And we'll have a copy of your approval by this time next week. Thank you. All right. Have a good afternoon. All right. Catherine, you can bring us home here. Item 6 is a conditional use request at 2801 Southeast 14th Street.
Chair, members of the board, Catherine Dreyhouse, planner for the city. This item, number 6, is located at 2801 Southeast 14th Street. Very similar to the request for item 5, they are looking for sales of wine and or beer for off-sale consumption as a liquor store defined under our zoning code. They would not be selling alcoholic liquor with this. So,
Okay.
again, located on Southeast 14th Street at the intersection with King Avenue. I know there's a mobile home park that kind of wraps around here to give a little bit of context. This is the current site as it is, a little bit closer in, and then they gave us a narrative about their proposal. Their hours of operation proposed to be 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. They're planning to do a fair bit of updating and improvement to the site as well. They did provide us with a site sketch that kind of walks through some of what they're going to do. I can zoom in on any of this if anyone's interested. But again, most of this falls under the site plan review process. And then generally, as before, we are recommending approval. We do have our standard conditions, so we have 12 conditions on it. Again, there shall be no sale of alcoholic liquor on the premises, and that would be condition number 1, and they could be brought back should there be any pattern of nuisance or violation under the zoning code. The zoning enforcement officer could bring them back. We did receive, according to the consent map, 1 card in opposition across the street, and then we have some cards from the neighborhood association. So. I believe this is the card from across the street. And then they said that they held their neighborhood meeting, but no one attended and they did not receive any comments. And then here's a copy of the letter that they mailed out.
They should have offered Casey's Pizza.
I know. And if you have any questions for staff at this time, I'd be happy to try and answer those.
Yeah, Catherine, you mentioned site plan, and I see a preliminary site plan and trees and nice, happy things. Would this have triggered site plan requirement because the building had sat vacant long enough? Was that part of it, or is it because of the change in use?
I believe Chris is willing to
Yes.
address that. I didn't look at the vacancy, but there might have been a cumulative value trigger as
Or,
well.
yeah, what kind of trigger do we have here?
It just came in under the wire. We were monitoring that site for vacancy, so I think it had maybe a couple weeks left, so it was okay to go back in.
So theoretically, and I'm not going to give away the farm here, I don't think, but if they did or didn't need our permission here, they would not necessarily have to trigger site plan or make site improvements then, would they?
It is a change.
That's
of
what I'm
use.
getting at, yeah.
Yeah.
So the change in use triggers it. It doesn't matter if it did or didn't sit vacant
Yeah.
long enough. The change in use triggers site plan requirement. Got it.
That's correct.
Got it, okay. But yes, there's a lot of them that they're almost at 6 months, and then somebody wakes up and, oh, hurry up and get a use in there so we don't have to make property improvements. Okay, but change in use here. Okay, and Catherine, any, I didn't see you had any restrictions in hours or anything for proposed
I believe that's correct.
conditions? Okay.
We didn't add that in as a
Yep.
condition.
And
They
that's
did-
okay. We can
They did
just,
provide us those hours. That
we can ask the applicant about that, yeah, in more detail there. 6 to 11, okay.
I have a curiosity question. When you send out the cards to the neighbors, in this instance, do you put down that it would not be liquor sales, only wine and beer?
So the
Good
notices that we send out have what literally we take from the agenda, what the agenda is saying. So if you look on the agenda, or in this case, our opening slide is what we also take. So essentially,
Okay.
this is
Okay,
inserted into our notice, and then the reverse side has the aerial map here.
because I thought one of those negative cards referred to liquor sales, but, okay, good to know.
Yeah, or enough liquor stores already.
Yeah, and it's a lot of jargon, so sometimes it's hard
Right.
for people who aren't familiar with the process.
And Catherine, you would have sent a notice about this requested use to the owner of the mobile home park, but you didn't send notices directly to the mobile home owners, correct?
That's most likely correct, yes.
Okay,
I'd
all right.
have
Just want to
double-check the
clarify
notice
that
list, but
that's
how
standard procedure. You send it to
process
the property
happens.
owner
Correct.
of the real estate. Okay, that's all I got. Anybody else? Okay, seeing none. Applicant or representative of the applicant, thank you for waiting. You've got up to 10 minutes to present your reasoning for your conditional use request. And just need your name and address.
Chairman, members of the board, Lloyd Ogle, attorney for the applicant, 301 East Walnut Street, Des Moines. I would just make a few comments about it. This is going to be a major renovation of the site and change of occupancy. It does trigger site review. We already know we're going to lose our entrance to East 14th Street. I'd point out, I don't know if you could pull up our architectural drawing, but a substantial amount of the floor space is actually devoted to convenience store types items, so it's going to be called Food Mart 1.
Okay.
And it'll have the look and feel of convenience store, even though we're technically a liquor store that doesn't sell hard alcohol. We'll probably, they estimate they'll probably put another 180,000 or more into the site. It does expand it on the north side. There's coolers that are being added. About our hours of operation, if you do want to limit our hours, we're okay with that. The 6 p.m. to 11 p.m., we'd like to be Sunday through Thursday. We'd like the opportunity to potentially sell till midnight on Saturdays and Sundays. We don't know if demand is going to be there or not, but we'd like the option to do so. If the board wants to limit the hours, we're fine with that.
So you go to midnight Friday and midnight Saturday?
Correct.
And open at 6 a.m. again in the mornings?
Yes.
Okay.
And then Sunday through Thursday,
Right,
11 p.m.
11. Mhm.
And be able to try and answer any questions you might have.
Sure. Questions for Lloyd? Well, Lloyd, sometimes it's hard to get excited about things that are called liquor stores, even if they're not selling liquor, but I'm more excited because it's not another car lot. At this location and numbers of others, it's kind of like the sign changes and the cars stay the same, jammed up to the curb. Southeast 14th has had improvements with some businesses, but we've continued to have kind of chronic character issues with others. I'm not going to name names, but there's some stuff around here that has needed a facelift for 40 years. So I'm pleased to see, and I realize it's a requirement if we were inclined to improve this, the change in use would trigger site plan. But from what I see here with street trees and on-site trees and probably a few little other improvements and nuances, looks like this would be quite the improvement. And with the limited hours, relatively speaking, that you're talking here, that would seem pretty fair to me. But the idea is this isn't just going to be liquor, beer, tobacco sign. You're going to say it's like a mart or market or something,
We're
right?
again, it'll, for advertising marketing purposes, it'll be Food Mart one.
Yeah,
and,
yeah. And we're not going to get into telling you what the signage is based on a number of reasons, but it sounds like you're going to market this as more than just a place where I can pop in to get my alcohol.
Correct, and we're also aware of the requirement to limit signage to just generic wine and beer.
Right.
We're not going to be advertising brands or anything.
And I'm just curious, if this is Sahota 5, there's Sahota 1, 2, 3, and 4, right?
Yeah, this is an experienced operator in Iowa. I don't know how many stores they have in Des Moines. We got a couple in Davenport, too.
Does your client have the other location near Galinsky's down there between Hartford and the Des Moines River? Is that a Sahota as well on the east side? Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I'm just curious, sir, on your other operations you've got in Des Moines, can you give us your name and then tell us where else you're operating?
GS Sahota, and we have other location on south.
Give your name and address first.
GS Sahota,
Yeah.
and 6325 Lakehurst Drive in Davenport, Iowa.
Sure.
And we have other location in 1805 Southeast 14.
Right, that's what I'm thinking of, okay. Would you operate this similar, or is this going to be a little different model for what you're going to sell and stuff?
We don't have liquor over here. We just
Right.
selling beer
Okay.
and wine and food, most of.
At your other location there on Southeast 14th?
We say liquor,
Okay.
hard liquor too.
Okay. All right. Excellent. Thank you. Anybody else have questions? This is another one I drive by here 2 to 4 times a day, so. Okay. All right. Lloyd, thank you for your presentation. Again, we got a packed house here, so we'll poll the audience. Anybody else who wants to speak in support of the applicant? Anybody speak in opposition or even neutrality? Seeing none. Anything staff wants to add? Questions, clarifications? Seeing none. Okay. All right, we'll close public portion, go to board deliberation. I'd be fine with approving this. I'd probably want to see, though, that we do have a condition of operating hours. Lloyd mentioned 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 6 a.m. to midnight, 12 a.m. on Friday, Saturday. I'll go ahead and make a motion to grant approval, subject to staff recommendations, and an addition of a number 12, a number 13 for those operating hours, 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. Sunday through Thursday, and 6 a.m. to 12 a.m. midnight on Friday, Saturday.
I'll second that.
All right, second by Justin. And all those in favor, raise your right hand, say aye. All right, motion carries 6-0. All right, thank you for coming in today, gentlemen. We'll have a copy of that approval by this time next week for you. Okay, we usually, of course, have our minutes. Any other business from staff? Anything we need to do? Okay. So what we'll do is, if you were here last month, if there's any corrections, please so note them. If none, would there be a motion to approve the minutes? Rhonda, second by Marlis. All those in favor who were here last month, raise your right hand, say aye. That's all 6 of us. Motion carries 6-0. Okay, this hearing is concluded.